Yes, Mayor Drapkin,
Here.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Here.
Commissioner Gormley is excused this evening, Commissioner Christensen,
Here.
and Commissioner Tate.
Here.
Thank you very much. We now are going to go to our roll call. And I'd like to know if any commissioner would like to have any item removed from the consent agenda. I don't hear any. I have a question I have a question on the audit engagement letter that's just for my own clarification. So I'd like to just ask that question of staff now instead of removing this from the consent agenda, unless that's out of order for this, but I'd prefer to do it that way. I don't need to actually remove the item. I would like some clarity. I'll look to you, Trina, for the make sure I'm staying in order. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I had some questions on the definition of reasonable assurance. And so under the objectives of the audit section, it says the objectives of our audit are to obtain reasonable assurance, and then it goes on to define that. What I'm unfamiliar with and looking for education on from Water and Light staff are the different levels of assurances that can come from the audit committee, and understanding how that is the level that is selected for this audit.
So, Madam Mayor, Mark Dunmeyer, Finance Director, if I could respond to that. So the reasonable assurance, they actually set that. That's not something that the audit committee, I suppose if we wanted to have an engagement that was different than a standard audit, we could ask for a higher level of assurance, but just a standard financial audit is one in which they would provide us assurance based on materiality considerations that provides, as they say in their opinion when they issue the audit, they state in there that it's reasonable assurance that the financial statements are represented, materially correct. So basically what that means is they're not guaranteeing from their audit that there won't be errors in the financials. Instead, they provide assurance that is, kind of from the preponderance of the work that they do, that will indicate to them that the financial statements are fairly presented as shown in the financial statements when they get in with the audit. So
wonderful. Thank you very much. And then I had one other question in regards to key audit matters. In the letter, it says it does not require the communication of key audit matters in the audit report unless engaged to do so. Will you help me understand what the key audit matters are?
So I would probably need to look into that a little bit to be certain of my answer, but I know that as part of the engagement, they will communicate to the commission. They also communicate to staff as well, but it's communicated to the commission any matters that they find that are outside of the the financial reporting. So as they go through and they assess our internal controls, and they'll look at how we perform our work day to day in the accounting function, they'll provide feedback for improvements that we can make, and then also if we are out of compliance with state guidelines or generally accepted accounting standards, they will note that as well, and that there is levels of kind of grades, I guess, of errors there everything from, like I said, just a kind of a best practice recommendation to a significant deficiency. And so anyway, they do provide that as a separate letter to the governing body.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarity. I'm just going to finish scrolling the document and make sure I didn't have one other. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you for helping with the clarity on that. So unless there's any other, Chair Tankersley?
Yes, real quickly, I would suggest that we just ask Mark to report back next month from the auditors what key audit matters are. My feeling is it's something over and above a usual audit that you want them to focus on, but I don't know for sure. So I think we should find out. I think we can go ahead and I'm comfortable signing the audit engagement letter now, but I would like to know what that is, please.
Thank you. I feel the same. I'm also comfortable signing the engagement letter, and I also would like to have a better understanding. Thank you, Chair. Okay, and so not hearing any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So
Second.
Thank you. So I'm going by voice because I'm moving back and forth between screens. So I'm going to say that Commissioner Tate moved to approve and Commissioner Christensen seconded.
It was Commissioner Tankersley moved and Commissioner Tate second.
Well, that's a terrible start. I apologize. I can't, as I'm referencing back and forth, I apologize. I lose the screen, so I can't see who pops up. So I apologize for my missteps. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And all of those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So included in the packet are accounts payable and purchasing reports. Are there any questions on these reports?
no.
My only question was, what are squincher sticks? General Manager Dietz, I'm. It's a real question. It's an item. It's not questioning the report, but it's something that has come up in the report, and
I can answer.
Thank you.
Well, those are the little additives we add to water for the cruise in the summer.
Oh, okay.
So it's for the cruise for what
Okay.
They're electrolyte drinks similar to Gatorade.
Oh, okay. I thought thank you. I thought they might serve a function kind of like later on when there's a contract of, later on when we talk about training and there's hot stick training, etc. That's the root of my question. Thank you for entertaining that. Okay. We'll now move to we have our consultant and partner reports. We'll start with Brent Keller, Forester. Please update the commission on forest management activities.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, both our stumpage sales for this year are in full swing. Powerline West is being logged by Ashley Logging. The entire unit is cut. They're logging and trucking the sale right now. About 130 loads have been shipped so far. Shipping has slowed down a little bit last few weeks, but they're plugging away. There's a typo there. I apologize. It's more like 600,000 feet have been shipped so far from the 130 loads. So they're about a third of the way through the estimated volume and value to date, and similar to Powerline East, where Dave Dober Construction is currently logging. We saw some of their activity today on the tour. and that's about half cut. And they're pretty much doing it 2 stages, where they're doing the upper section entirely before they move to the bottom section. So they're wrapping up the top section. They've shipped roughly 150 loads so far to Stella Jones and other locations. Stella is the log buyer, and they're a pole outfit, so they're taking just the poles and then peddling the rest of the wood to other destinations. They are recovering, just for your information, recovering a really high proportion of poles. Pole buyers hope to get 30% in poles to get on board to buy a sale. They're getting so far about 60% off this sale, and it's not going to get any worse. The whole entire unit is a really nice timber, so that's good news there. Road maintenance and silviculture projects for both sales are currently underway. As far as fire season, this year we didn't start fire season in Northwest District 3 until after the 4th. Usually it starts before the 4th. We started July 11th. We're still at a level 1 low fire hazard classification level. The fire trucks at the treatment plant, I believe the water truck, like a water tender type truck, is going to show up there in the next week or so. So we're very prepared, as are all the operators. I did just read a fire forecast report for Oregon, and Northwest Oregon and Northeast Oregon are predicted to have real moderate to low fire season. So that fits in well for us. The rest of the state's probably going to have a little more volatile fire season, but I'm optimistic we'll have a real ho-hum fire season this year. Any questions?
Thank you very
I'll
much.
just,
Oh,
I'm
please
sorry,
go
Remy.
ahead. Nope.
I'll just mention that on our way back down from the tour today, we passed the water tanker on its way back up to the plant. So that valve has been repaired, and it is now at the treatment plant.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. Thank you both.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We have no appearance requests on the agenda tonight, nor do we have any staff reports. We'll move to old business. On the city service fee discussion, General Manager John Dietz, is there an update on this item?
I believe the only update we have is that we have sent from our special meeting, we have sent to you, Mayor, and Chair Tankersley, this draft comments from staff for the memo, and I have not heard anything back. I saw some comments from Tom, but I don't know if you have any additional comments.
Thank you. Given the latest communication, I don't. Chair Tankersley, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I'm fine. I think Sam incorporated the comments we had earlier, and I really appreciate the quick turnaround from him. And it's my understanding from Sam, I think, that John, it's ready for you to look at. And if you, on behalf of staff, don't have any concerns, Remy and I are okay to send it.
Okay.
As soon as that happens, I'm sure you'll do it, but just to make sure you would copy the rest of the commission, please.
Yeah, well, we'll probably send that in the morning then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing on changes to electric rate and charges. And so in order of conducting this public hearing, as we're going through this, I may impose reasonable time limits on participants and receive documents and reports into the hearing record. At today's hearing, the commission expects to hear a staff report. During the staff report, I may recognize other members of the commission to ask questions for staff. Absolutely will if other members of the commission or have questions to ask of staff. After the staff report, interested parties will be invited to ask questions. Before stating your questions, please state your name and address for the record. Because we are operating in a hybrid digital format on Zoom, there's an overview of important procedural items to ensure the meeting runs smoothly for everyone participating. Any interested party that has joined the Zoom meeting is automatically set to be on mute and to have their video display hidden. At the appropriate times during the meeting, I will ask those in attendance whether they would like to speak. When this occurs, please select the raise hand option from your device. This can be accessed by hovering your mouse or cursor over the lower part of the screen where a toolbar will pop up. From this toolbar, select participants. This will open another toolbar on the right-hand side of the screen. From that toolbar on the right, you can select raise hand at the bottom of the participants tool. When you have selected raised hand, the staff person managing the meeting will know that you would like to ask a question. I will give adequate time at these points during the meeting to ensure that we capture everyone that would like to ask a question of staff. And I would ask Trina that you'll help me with that as I am moving back and forth between screens and I don't want to miss anybody at all. If anyone has difficulty using the raise hand feature, you may also use the chat feature to type and state that you'd like to speak. McMinnville Water and Light Clerk, Trina will be monitoring this during the meeting. If you use the chat feature, please note your name and address and confirm that you wish to ask a question of staff about electric rates. If you are calling in via phone and do not have access to Zoom meeting video and toolbar, please wait until I ask if there is anyone on the phone who would like to ask a question. I'll make sure that everyone who wants to participate in the public hearing has an opportunity to do so. After the staff report, the commission will invite comments of interested parties. The commission may have questions for the interested parties. After questions by the interested parties, the staff will be invited to make a final comment. Finally, I will close the hearing and the commission will deliberate and make a decision. At this time, our utility rate analyst, Trina McManus, will make the staff presentation. Trina.
Thank you. Good evening. We're here tonight to conduct a public hearing on changes to electric rates and charges. I'll start by just introducing myself and providing some background information on our consultant for the record. My name is Trina McManus, and I'm the utility rate analyst for McMinnville Water and Light. I've worked for the utility for the last 12 years and have focused on cost of service for about the last year and a half. I've been working with Power Resource Manager Jamie Phillips on the latest update to MW&L's cost of service model in 2021, and also worked closely with our consultants throughout that process. In January of 2021, MW&L hired a consultant, Utility Financial Solutions, to update our cost of service model and provide rate design recommendations. Mark Beauchamp is the president of Utility Financial Solutions and has over 30 years of experience in the utility environment. He's completed cost of service and rate studies for more than 200 municipal systems around the United States and has served as an expert witness in rate cases. Mark is recognized as a national expert in his field and often speaks at conferences and presents to industry organizations. Over the next several months, staff gathered data to go into the cost of service model. In June of 2021, Mark Beauchamp of Utility Financial Solutions presented the results of the cost of service study and provided recommendations to the commission for electric rate adjustments. The recommended rate adjustments were designed to recover power costs and meet the overall revenue requirement, maintain a positive operating income, maintain a healthy cash reserve, and better align customer classes with cost of service. In August of 2021, staff proposed minor rate adjustments for year one based on that cost of service analysis. Those changes were mainly in the lighting rate classes. The municipal lighting costs went up a little bit and the rental lighting costs went down a little bit. But overall, those changes were revenue neutral. The commission adopted the proposed changes in August and they went into effect October 1 of 2021. Tonight, the commission is considering year two of that rate design as recommended by the consultant and discussed with the commission last year. The adjustments will increase revenue for our distribution customers by about 1.73%. which results in just about $1.40 a month on a typical residential bill. It is staff's opinion, based on familiarity with MW&L's electric department's financial status, revenue requirements, and review of the Utility Financial Solutions Cost of Service Study, that the proposed rate adjustments are based on system costs and electric rates necessary to provide adequate receipts for maintenance and operation of the system, maintenance of adequate reserves for contingencies, and contemplated additions, improvements, and extensions to the system. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for the staff report. Are there any questions from commissioners? Chair Tankersley, I see you going to unmute. Start with you.
Yes, thank you. Just real quickly, am I correct that this will mean that over a 2-year period, rates will raise less than 2% total?
That's correct.
And also, as I remember, we talked about this earlier. There was a question about Bonneville giving us a refund, perhaps, or lowering the power rate, while at the same time raising the transmission rate. Has that been taken into account in this recommendation?
Yes, they lowered power rates and raised transmission rates. And yes, that was considered. Yes, because we did not make the final recommendations and the final decisions until after those rates were finalized.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the commission? Could you explain the exceptions to me? Demand charges will not, this is number 3 in Exhibit A. Demand charges will not apply to nonprofit outdoor lighted facilities or standalone meters that are available to the community. I apologize, I just don't quite understand exactly the application of the exception.
So I believe that exception was for like stadium lighting at places like Linfield College. So a few years back, I think they came to the commission and asked for that exception because when those lights come on, there is a very high demand associated with that. And because it benefits a large number of community members, those specifically were given an exception. Is that correct, John?
Yes, and that would also apply to the high school too, I believe.
The high school lighting, yeah.
Thank you very much. The other clarification is in the irrigation rate schedule, and this is the power factor cost. And I'm just asking for also, again, for clarity on the power factor cost or kind of a definition of that terminology, power factor cost.
So I believe that has to do with the efficiency of the pumps that they run. So if they have older pumps that don't run very efficiently, then they have poor power factor. And so if it runs below a certain amount, then they have a penalty associated with that. So they're encouraged to have efficient pumps so that they utilize the least amount of, or it decreases the strain on the system.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Do other members of the commission have questions? Okay.
I think you've muted yourself, Remy.
Thank you. Are there any interested parties' questions?
Mr. Davis is here in the commission room, as indicated, he doesn't have any questions of Ms. McManus.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. Do we have any raised hands on Zoom?
We do not.
Thank you. Do we have any parties on the phone?
We do not.
Thank you. Are there any final staff comments?
I do not have any.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you want
I'll now close the public hearing and we'll move to deliberations. Should any member of the commission like to discuss?
First of all, just to clarify, please, the staff report and all those materials are part of the record, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm comfortable with it. I'm sorry anytime we have to raise rates, but given other and our costs, I'm very pleased that staff was able to hold it down to this.
Thank you, Chair. Other commissioner comments? I did have two questions. One is, again, a definition. One is wheeling rate schedule. It's an unfamiliar term to me, a wheeling rate schedule.
John, do you want to take that one or you want me to take a shot?
No, I can take that one. So we actually wheel power or transmit power over our system to Portland General Electric. And those customers are up on Peavine off Eagle Point. And so we charge what we call a wheeling rate to wheel that power across our system.
Thank you. My other question is on the reconnect fee. I noticed that the NSF check charge didn't go up, but the reconnect fee did. And there's a correlation in my mind, whether that's accurate or not, between those two things, in that they both indicate that there was an inability to make a payment at some point. And so just from coming to understand the priorities of the commission, I just had some questions about that reconnect fee in terms of just wanting to know the staff perspective on kind of, are my assumptions that the reconnect fee is associated with non-payment correct? I guess that would be the first question, because if it's an incorrect assumption, then.
That's correct, but they're not necessarily correlated to an NSF fee. So the NSF fee is really intended to just be a pass-through fee from the fee that the bank charges us when somebody bounces a check. So when we reviewed that rate schedule, we did contact the bank and verify that the fee that we're currently charging does cover our costs when somebody bounces a check. And it does. So since that didn't go up from the bank, we did not increase that fee. But we do increase the reconnect fee on a pretty regular basis as wages increase for personnel. Different things go up, gas prices to drive out there, things like that. Then we are forced to increase that reconnect fee because it involves a staff person physically going to the location to reconnect the service.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I believe we are ready to take action on this public hearing at this point. So I would ask for a motion from a member of the commission.
And Madam Mayor, if you want to proceed to that, I can read the resolution. There is a resolution to approve the rates. I can read that by title only if you'd like me to.
Thank you very much.
So this is resolution number 2022-14, a resolution adopting electric rates, charges, and fees by the city of McMinnville acting by and through its Water and Light Commission. That's resolution number 2022-14.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Tate
I'll second.
and a second from Commissioner Christensen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And all those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion passes unanimously. Chair Tankersley?
Real quickly, I think based on your question, it would be helpful for the commission if staff could just send us out sometime between now and the next meeting a little explanation of all the steps that go through before somebody does get disconnected, what the notices are, what staff attempts to do. I think it's worthwhile that the commission be reminded of what that is. So if I could have staff do that, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next item is apprentice training agreement with Portland General Electric. James Burke, will you please present this agenda item?
Good evening. McMinnville Water and Light is preparing to begin an electrical meterman apprenticeship program September 2022. We would like to utilize the Portland General Electric company training agreement. This apprenticeship is important to ensure succession planning is in place for the meterman position. This is a 3-year program with costs shown in attachment A of the agreement. The costs are captured in the 2022-23 fiscal budget, and this includes the apprenticeship meterman position. Staff recommends commission approve authorizing the mayor and the clerk sign this agreement to expand our ability to seek out the best training opportunities for our staff. At this point, I can open up to any questions commission may have.
Thank you, Director Burke. Are there any, Chair Tankersley?
2 questions. One, does everybody knows that I don't like indemnity. So does our insurance cover the indemnity obligation?
I'll take that. Commissioner Tankersley, we did run this by CIS. So they did go, and CIS gave us specific feedback, and PG actually did modify the agreement to meet their standards. For the agreement originally required a waiver of subrogation, which CIS didn't want to do, and we got PG to take that out. They also modified the indemnity to put in the sole negligence language that is consistent with our insurance policy. So yes, our insurance did approve this.
Oh, great. And so that answers the second question is, can we get insurance that's required by the agreement? And we can, is that correct?
That's correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any other members of the commission that have questions? Commissioner Tate.
I just was looking for some clarification around, it sounded like maybe we used a different training program in the past that was far away with a different, is that right? Did we use training from someone else previously?
Not for an apprentice meterman position. We've used training. We have a different agreement in place for the alignment apprentice program, which is still in place. We still are utilizing that agreement. This one would be used for, what we're looking to use it for is the meterman apprentice program, which is not offered in the other agreement.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other commissioners with questions?
I just, as you think about adding this to the training program, are there other types of apprentice programs or training programs that you're looking at to continue to support workforce here? Maybe that's the cart before the horse, but I think it's proactive, the work that you're doing here.
I'd say yes, but I'll let John talk to that a little bit.
So the one that we really would like to see, which we've been working with Chemeketa and some of the other community college, is the water, what they call the WET program, the water treatment, water distribution, because there are so few of those certified operators that we typically have to train them on our own. And so right now, I believe, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's only one community college now that has a program. Is that correct, Bob?
Yes, Chemeketa is the only one that currently has it. Lynn Benton had a program, but I think COVID helped to kind of shut that down. They just didn't have the enrollment to keep it sustainable. And I know the community college down in Roseburg, Umpqua, was looking to start up a program. I haven't heard that has gotten off the ground yet, though. So yeah, So
think it's Clackamas,
Clackamas is the only one right now.
Yeah.
Clackamas, not Chemeketa.
Correct.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Clackamas.
Clackamas, yeah.
And I've been talking with Chemeketa about this issue and seeing if we can get something started.
I know there are several smaller communities that are looking for to fill positions in the future as their new utilities come online. There's some pretty significant investments taking place. So that's interesting. I look forward to hearing how those conversations go.
Thank you. I'm sorry, do we need an action on this, or
Yes.
this is?
I would move that the commission approve this agreement and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement.
I'd second that.
I have a motion by Chair Tankersley and a second by Commissioner Christensen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And all those opposed, please signify by saying nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Our next item is to approve broker-dealer firms for investments. Mark Dunmeyer, Finance Director, please present this agenda item.
Yes, thank you. So as noted in my memo, 2 broker-dealers are recommended for commission approval for the approved broker-dealer list. So just some background. On the 31st of May, the investment committee met and reviewed the 6 broker-dealers that are shown in the table in my memo. And at that time, guidance of the investment committee was that Morton Capital Markets, Stifel Financial, and U.S. Bancorp Investments all met the minimum qualifications for approval, and therefore would be good for moving forward with presenting to the commission for consideration. And there, just before the June meeting, I learned that, and this was through a best practice article through the OGFOA, that that it's important for safekeeping services to be independent third parties when you're transacting a financial investment. You want the safekeeping service to be independent of that transaction, and so got me thinking about that we were considering U.S. Bank as providing investment services, and then also U.S. Bancorp as the investment, as a potential source for investments. And so I contacted the bank, and just the timing of it, we didn't present in June just to determine additional information on the safekeeping services. Through some emails with the investment committee, we held off. And so this evening, from the guidance investment committee, we're just presenting, there's only 2 presented for approval, Morton Capital and Steina Financial. And US Bancorp is still kind of on the back burner, but we need to do some more investigation on safekeeping services. Ultimately, if we choose US Bank, need to make sure that there's not a conflict there. I also noted in my memo that Stifel Financial had a lot of regulatory actions against the company, 135, which is obviously concerning. However, in my investigation, just in looking at all the other firms, it's clear that it's not uncommon for brokerage firms to receive regulatory actions. On the list except for Morton Capital experienced regulatory actions, and Morton's was the smallest of the companies in terms of dollar amounts and also staff, brokers employed. So that probably played a part in Morton's clean. They didn't have any regulatory actions compared to the others. So after, again, discussion with the investment committee, because Anthony Nelson, who's the broker that we've been working with, talking to, has never experienced regulatory actions himself, and all the investment purchases would be transacted through a safekeeping bank, ensuring that water and light funds and securities would never be held by a brokerage firm. Stifel and Anthony Nelson are still being recommended for approval consideration by the Commission. So with respect to safekeeping services, wanted to provide a little bit of an additional update through today, actually. So indicated in my memo that asset ownership is a significant difference between the different types of safekeeping services. Under basic services, assets may be considered general assets of the bank or safekeeping institution, and thereby not be protected from potential creditors of the safekeeping institution if that institution became insolvent. Whereas under custodial services, investment assets would be held separate from the bank's assets. And so, again, this was from some, from an article that I found and research that I did, article from GFOA and other research. That's what I learned. And so I inquired with the bank. And like I said, I've received emails back and forth and actually spoke with folks from the bank today as well. So, so as far as US Bank goes, they do offer both basic services and custodial services. Their custodial services are done through US Bank's Institutional Trust and Custody Department. And so when I asked them about the asset ownership question, turns out that both their basic services and their custodial services are considered, the assets in those that would be held by those different groups are considered off-balance sheet assets, which would mean that they're not part of the bank's assets, and therefore they would be protected from creditors. And that is true as long as we don't have, say, CDs or money market accounts that can be think of as cash. Then it becomes just a depository asset, which becomes on balance sheet for the bank. But if it's the instruments we've been talking about, U.S. Treasuries, then it's off balance sheet. So not part of the bank's assets. So then on the question of independent third party, U.S. Bank safekeeping and investment services are provided through different companies, but they are under the same parent corporation is what I learned. And so because of this, our bank relationship manager told me that if we were to use U.S. Bank Core Investments to purchase investments and then say keep those investments with U.S. Bank's safekeeping services, they wouldn't be considered independent third party. And I mentioned this article, GFOA recommends those transactions be third party. That's a best practice because, and this is required in our investment policy, that you want the transaction to be made on a delivery versus settlement basis, which means that when we provide the money, the investment company provides the treasury investment, and the bank facilitates the exchange at the same time. So that's why that's important. And so when I asked the bank about this, they did tell me today that even if we were to purchase securities through U.S. Bank Core Investments and say keep with U.S. Bank, they still would transact those delivery versus settlement. That's just a policy. That's the way they do it. So, so I'm not certain at this point if that resolves that concern or not. I feel like I needed a little more work there, but that was good information that I learned today. And then the last thing is cost. I just wanted to share what I learned today about cost. So I've mentioned before on the basic safekeeping services from the bank, they're nominal. They're $40 one-time setup fee and about $22 a month after we have an investment in place, $20 a month to have the account, and then an extra $2 a month once the investments are in place. So pretty minimal costs compared to the trust and custody department for institutional safekeeping. That has a minimum annual charge of $12,000. So and I believe that's, obviously all the different banks for the custodial services, which are their higher level flagship services. You get a relationship manager and a team of people to help you with your safekeeping, and they're generally designed for investors that invest, millions and millions of dollars, and our investment level is going to be much less than that. So, anyway, that's what I learned today about costs. So, like I said, I feel like there's additional information that I still need to get on safekeeping services, and I plan to share that with the investment committee, and ultimately, with guidance of the committee, come to a recommendation decision, and then bring that to the commission. I've also reached out to 2 additional brokers here recently that were recommended by the Yamhill County Treasurer. Once their information has been presented to the investment committee, and depending on the guidance received, those broker-dealers may also be brought back to the commission for approval consideration. So again, this evening, the recommendation is just for Morton Capital Markets and Steina Financial for approval consideration. However, even if the commission did approve those brokers and the brokerage firms, no investment purchases can be considered until we have a safekeeping institution. That's required by our policy, and so, like I said, that will need to be brought back. A recommendation will need to be brought to the commission once that's the investment committee has looked at that, and at that time we would bring contractual documents also for commission consideration for approval. And then, kind of following back up with the U.S. Bank core investments, if there weren't any conflicts or concerns about the safekeeping institution, kind of in concert with U.S. Bank core investments, then we could also bring forward U.S. Bank core investments for consideration of approval on the list also to the commission. So that's what I wanted to share, just as kind of information about my memo and the information in it. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions the commission might have.
Thank you. I wonder if I guess my first question is if you're considering including a third recommendation, a third party that might alter from the approval that you're looking for today. Would you still prefer that the commission move forward with this approval at this time? That's what I derived from what you're saying, and I just want to make sure I understood correctly. You'd prefer the commission move forward with approving these 2 companies, even though you may bring in a third down the road, or bring back.
That was yes, I guess, in short, and the reason behind that, I mean, the commission could certainly wait and approve at a later time, because even with these approvals, there's not going to change what we're going to be able to do. We could bring these back. There's just a lot of volume in these this information that the commission considers, and so we thought it might be helpful for the commission, having looked at all of this, if the commission felt to approve these, we could do that, and then that would just reduce volume the next time we come back to the commission with additional broker dealer recommendations.
Okay, so the concern is more for volume on the commission rather than what the demand that's being put on staff.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. I have one other question, but I'll hold mine for now. Are there other members of the commission that have questions? Okay, not seeing any. My only question is whether or not we have comparative, there's a lot of great comparative data in this report, which I really appreciate. Thank you. The one thing I wasn't able to find was the relative size of the 2 companies being brought forward. So we know one is clean and they're relatively small. I hope clean is an appropriate word to use there. The other has a large volume of actions against it. And so, I don't know what relatively small to large means. Does one firm have 5 clients and the other 5,000 or 5 to 500 or 50, you know, et cetera? So could you add clarity?
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know on the number of clients for each of the firms. I just know that in talking with the broker that I've been working with from Morton Capital Financial, he indicated that I think he said that they had 6 brokers. It's a small firm, and that's kind of evident in the, you know, when you look at the dollar amounts going through their balance sheet compared to Steinhoff. Steinhoff is significantly larger, and Steinhoff actually, when we first started this process, Anthony Nelson was with a different brokerage company who was bought by Steinhoff. So Steinhoff is a large organization. So that's probably about as good a job as I can share with you what I know relative to their sizes.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions from members of the commission? Commissioner Tate, I see you're unmuted.
I was just going to, I don't have my notes in front of me, Mark, so I was just going to see if you could add sort of some information about how these 2 brokerage firms came. I feel like you had some references from some other parties, which is part of the reason, you know, there's a lot of options out there. So one way to try to figure out good people to work with is to find out who else is working with these people. And I feel like you collected some of that data, and I apologize that I don't have that in my notes in front of me right now, but do you recall who else was connected with these parties?
Yeah, so when I started this process several months back, I reached out to Lori Steele, who at that time was the treasurer for Marion County. She also has sat on the short-term investment board for the state. She's pretty experienced. She actually just retired a couple months ago. So anyway, prior to retirement, I reached out to her, and she was very helpful to me. And of the brokers that they use, she highly recommended these 2 brokers, Mark Walker and Anthony Nelson. And so that's where I ended up with these 2 gentlemen. And then just in working with them, yeah, I also felt like they've been very helpful and provided very good information to me. So I did reach out to one of the other. So part of what they do is they provide a list of references, and I did reach out to one of the other references and also got high marks. So I feel like they're, you know, in the research that I've done and what I've experienced personally, I thought they were good folks to work with.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I feel like also, since we're talking about, you know, treasury bonds and not other types of investments that were on the lower risk side of a lot of financial investing in this transaction that we're talking about. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from other members of the commission?
I don't have any questions, but I want to thank Mark for the in-depth report that he provided and the work of the investment committee. I know this is a lot to take on, and it's been quite detailed. So I appreciate the time that's been placed on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now look for a motion to approve the adoption of the attached resolution.
And Chair Tankersley, did you have a question?
Yeah, real quick question, and that's actually a comment. It's my understanding that Kathy, you and Ed are the investment committee, right?
Yes, we are, although Commissioner Gormley has been been taking a lot more of the weight there, but yes, we've been working together on this.
Yeah, I appreciate on this too. Mark, of course, gets everything for you, but I think I appreciate the way you've worked with this too. So thank you.
Thank you.
And if the commission's ready, I can read this resolution by title only.
Thank you.
This is resolution number 2022-15, a resolution by the Water and Light Commission of the City of McMinnville approving a broker-dealer firm list and authorizing an investment officer to invest funds pursuant to said list. That's resolution number 2022-15.
So moved.
I'll second then.
I appreciate that since I'm on the committee. I like that you guys are doing that.
I thought that you'd like to second, but I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Chair Tankersley and a second by Commissioner Christensen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Mayor, is it okay if I pull the commission on the resolution?
Oh,
Is that all
please,
right?
please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Dropkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Tate.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, our next, so the resolution passes unanimously. Our next item is a draft update to customer service policies. John Spence, Customer Service Manager, please present this agenda item.
Yes, thank you. In your packet, you'll find the memo for the customer policies draft there. And after the memo, you'll see the red line changes on the customer policies. Staff wanted to get this out to the commission for some comments. The intent is to take feedback, any comments or changes, along with additional things found and bring back, not next meeting, but the following meeting after that. A lot of this was in anticipation of getting some language in there for the city services charge and just some other things that staff has found.
Thank you, Mr. Spence. I will open this up to members of the commission for questions to start. Chair Tankersley?
I have several. The first one is in, let me look to make sure I've got the right number. And Trina, can you help me sometime? It used to be on this, I could make the notes right where I wanted, where it was, but now I can't do that for some reason with my new iPad. So maybe I can talk to you about how to do it right later, please.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Okay, so 1.1.1 is my question, and let's put that's the right number there. 1.1.1. Yes, is this is the city utilities charged? Is that are city utilities like sewer and then eventually stormwater, or do they also include the city service fee, which is really not a utility, as I understand it?
I believe I might have to reference Mr. Justice as well, but I believe that was intended to cover everything from the cities as far as any charge from the city.
Okay, great. So if we just make sure that that's, there's no question about that, please.
Okay.
The second one is 4.1.3. And my question is, are we talking about an outstanding bill for water or electricity provided by McMinnville Water and Light? So let me get to there. 4.1.3.
Could you repeat your question, please?
It talks about if there's an outstanding bill, they don't get new service until it's paid. But
yes,
that bill, I think, for water and for electricity or water, right? It wouldn't be an outstanding bill to the city for this services fee or the stormwater, because we don't want to deny some of the electricity service for that, right?
That is the intention, yes, and it would need to be some language in there to clarify that.
Great, thank you. and I appreciate you running this by us so we can all work together on it here. The next one is 4.2.2. It has to do with this information shared with the city. It seemed to be inconsistent. The Social Security number section after that should. I thought we had talked about that we would share with the city the name and the address of the customer so that they could then do their collection efforts, but we wouldn't share Social Security numbers or driver's licenses or such like that. Is that?
Could you repeat that section? What did you say, 442?
I think it's 422. I think. Let me look.
I had the same question because there is not a 422. But
Okay.
under
I think it's-
4.4,
Yeah, I think it's 4.41 and 2.
It's 4.4.2, excuse me. 4.4.2.
Yes.
And so the question would be, does the commission want to share everything, including the Social Security number? They want to share just the name and address of the person, or do they want to share other information we might have?
I don't understand what the purpose of sharing a social security number would be in this scenario for the city. I would think the name and the address are the pertinent information. But
I think you want, if you're an aggressive collector, you want somebody's Social Security number, I think, but I mean, I don't.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in. It's ultimately a decision for the commission to decide what it wants to share. I can just tell you that under federal law, we have to tell customers because what the purpose of giving us the Social Security number is going to be used for. Because giving a Social Security number has to be a voluntary act. So we have to tell the customer when they give it to us what we're going to use it for. So part of this, putting it in the customer policy is to let the customers know, at least constructively, and we should have it on our forms, telling the customers when they give us a Social Security number, if we are going to pass it on to the city for collection purposes, otherwise we need to tell them that. And so it's a disclosure requirement. And so the commission can decide to do it either way, but we just need to be transparent with the customer and tell them.
Do we know if the city needs that information for its collection purposes? Having been someone who's
we
had their
don't know
social
it.
security, yeah, I've had my social security number stolen and it was years of still dealing with it. So I'm concerned about the risk both for Water and Light and for the city.
Yeah,
But if it's necessary.
I also had questions about the Social Security numbers, and I think that this would it would be great to kind of hold and do a little bit more investigation on this, because I also am unclear if that's information that would need to be shared, unless Mr. Spence, if you have more to add that has that request come in?
I don't think so. I think where this is mainly going to help us is when it's time to give information to the city. If the commission is still wishing to move forward with, maybe John, if you could answer that.
So I think the first question is, John, the customer does not have to give us their Social Security number.
That is true.
So, I mean, that's, I think, the basis you have to start with. If we may or may not have a Social Security number for the customer.
But if you do take it, you have to tell them what you're going to do with it.
Correct.
And so I'm feeling like, I felt like some of these things in here maybe seemed less, they seemed more challenging to clarify, because I feel like everything with the city agreement isn't finalized. So I feel like some of these policy, some of the language in some of these policies may differ depending on how the final arrangements come down with the work with the city. And I think there's still discussions going on in some areas, just at least a clarification about, how we're going to work together. So I wondered, I mean, I know this is just a discussion at this point, and it sounds like there's a couple, months before everything will be solidified. So maybe the timing will all work out where, when you're ready to solidify, you'll also have a solid agreement with the city. But for right now, I think there's some discussion points that maybe it isn't clear enough to talk about yet. Based on where we are in that process. That's just my thinking around this, unless I'm missing something.
No, I would share. I think that's the correct way to look at it. I think at this point, I think Mr. Spence and staff's intention here was to make sure that the commission, realizing we got some new commissioners on the commission and the mayor's new our commission, that you realize you understand we do have these customer policies. They do exist, and they do address these issues. So it's as much informational as anything else. And certainly, if you want to give us direction on things to emphasize or things to look at, I think that'll be helpful to us as we move forward.
I feel like it would be, maybe useful to us as as things are getting solidified with the city, with the work with the city, that maybe we could see how those agreements with the city and the decisions for how things are going to work connect back to certain policies in this document, so that we can have clarity that how we're planning to work with the city is also, well documented in our policies for water and light, and that there's a, clear understanding of how the policy supports the agreement that happened. But helping the commission to make those connections, I think, would be helpful.
I agree with Ken. The one thing I could think of is I know most people don't read these things. I do, and the more that my social security number is going to get passed around, the less apt I'm going to agree that water and light gets it at all. If you read it, I think. But that's just, I mean, if the city, so I guess what I'm saying is I agree with Kathy, we should see what the city needs, but if they really don't need it, I would prefer that we don't share the social security number, because first of all, there's liability there. And second, I think our customers will have better feelings about us and be more apt to give us a social security number in case we have to use it to collect, if we're keeping it, if we're not sharing it, basically.
So Tom, if we take a social security number and we need to disclose why we're taking it, and so let's say we took it for the purposes of credit or collections, and that was our reasoning, and we did not take it with the intent, we're not going to share it with the city. Is there a reason that we could not share with the city when we do have a customer that goes into collections or has a credit issue? I mean, can that information be shared, or because the city wouldn't need to run their own check for those purposes if we were passing along, if we were already doing it for the same customers and sharing that information. I don't know whether we'd want to or not. I'm just bringing that up.
Here's the issue. Early on, to try to figure out a way to make this work for the city, where, and Remy, correct me if I'm wrong, but in talking with the city staff and what I hear from the council, I think, but I'm not positive on that one, is that nobody wants to cut off someone's electricity or water because they haven't paid a $13 city services fee. Right. And that's not as easy as it sounds. And if you have an hour, John Spence can explain it to you. And he's very good at explaining it. It's just very complicated. But what I think we've come up with is an idea that we have to basically write off and turn over to collection these charges before the city charges before you get to the threatening shut-off charge stage, because otherwise what our system spits out is something, if you don't pay this amount, you get shut off, and that would include the city services fee, the sewer, the stormwater, and all that. So to avoid cutting off someone's vital services for failure to pay the city services fee, it looks like we're going to have to turn a certain number of people over to them to collect. And what might happen to that person would be they would then enter into a payment plan with us for their past due sewer or past due water or electric, or they would pay it. They'd pay the past due water and electric. They wouldn't get cut off. So we might not be instituting collection where the city has to, because our threat to disconnect tends to have people pay, and the city won't have that threat to disconnect. So the concern is the city will probably get a lot more things to turn over to collection than we will. Is that right, John?
I think if I understood your last comment, when you say that they'll get a lot more things to collection than we will, I want to make sure I understand that.
That our appropriate threat to turn off your water and sewer if you don't either pay or make arrangements with us will get people to pay or make arrangements. But before you get to that threat, to make our kick, we're going to have to write off for our purposes the city services fee, and then the city will have to take collection.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty close. I think what I've done is we can have the city service fee not included in those disconnect notices or I'm trying to think of the other term, but the notices that go out to say you're going to be disconnected, we tell you have to pay a certain amount for a certain time or we're going to turn you off. We can have the city service charge not in that number. Where we get the issue is at about a 60-day balance. If it's a customer that only pays what they need to stay from being disconnected, at the time that city service charge hits 60 days, we cannot prevent any of their payments other than going toward that. So if they pay what we're telling them to pay to prevent disconnection, it's going to hit that city service charge first, because the way the system works, we pay electric, water, sewer currently in that order, oldest balance to newest balance. We bring on the new city service charge, new division with a new provider. That's going to be probably at the end, I would guess, after sewer, as far as order of payment, but it's still going to fall into the realm of oldest balance to newest balance. So if you have the city service charge sitting out as the oldest balance all by itself, customer makes a payment, the first thing it's going to hit is that city service charge. And if we're telling them they need to pay a certain amount to prevent disconnection, we cannot stop it from going to that city service charge, and they will be paying short from what we're telling them for disconnect.
And I would just add, I believe we discussed all of this in these good faith conversations we had, and everybody's on the same page of understanding with that. And I would reiterate what Chair Tankersley said at the beginning, that there's no desire on behalf of the city that somebody would have their water or electric shut off because they hadn't paid their city service charge. What I don't know is how collections work specifically for the city of McMinnville. So doesn't leave me in an educated place to really comment on the reference to the social security numbers. In terms of the volume of cutoffs that was referenced, that does bring up a question for me. And I feel like we've talked about this before, but if you will, for my benefit, what's the average number of shutoffs that are happening in, say, a month, in a billing cycle in a month?
Sorry, I just do a little bit of math in my head. We can average, we have 3 days that we do them now. I'm going to guess anywhere from 100 to 150 during the month.
And John, are those shutoffs or threats to shut off?
That number is the one I'm giving you, where we're actually going out with the intent that needed to pay or they're getting turned off. If we're talking, I have not gotten the numbers for the first disconnect notice, which is you get your second bill, you haven't paid enough to get without of that threshold. I haven't seen those numbers, but the 5-day notice, which you'll get your second bill with a 15-day notice. If you don't make a payment by that deadline on that one, you get what's known as the 5-day notice. That one, we've had as many as 100 a day that we've sent out. That's a mailed notice from the facility here. We put it in the mail.
Okay, and perhaps my memory is just faulty, but I thought I remember that there were actually very few shutoffs that happened every month. That it was actually fairly rare that somebody's water and electric service was actually shut off, that usually people are able to be brought into compliance. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
Well, those are the notices that were delivered. The intent is to make contact with the customer, give them that one last opportunity to make payment. But that is the point where they've already hit that disconnect state. Right now, I think we have 7 or 8 customers that are off, but we delivered 30 notices today. So we didn't turn all 30 off. But the number I gave you would be how many of those notices we've delivered.
Okay, thank you. I'm generally in alignment here with what I'm hearing from the rest of the commission, or well, definitely from Commissioner Tate, but I believe that I think this is in development as we learn more. I think from the from working with the city, I think that this is a clarity conversation that can come through the finance director of the city of McMinnville in terms of what would be needed for collections. And that if this policy is meant to address what the city would need, then the direction to go would be to ask the finance director what is needed, and then incorporate that into the policy so that the policy is neither overreaching nor too narrow. Chair?
My thought is that we need that information to balance the needs of the commission and the needs of the city. We need to know how important it is to the city, and then we look and see how important it is to us to do it one way. Not whatever the city wants is fine. I want to know how important it is to them. Then I want to look at the pros and cons for us.
I understand. Perhaps the intent of my comment was misunderstood. I was suggesting we should reach out to the finance director at the city of McMinnville and ask what their collection process is, so that information can be known by water and light staff in terms of what their general practice is. So it was not an indication that it should be, what do you need? And then it's a carte blanche. It was a request for information.
Thank you. I misunderstood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next point is on Social Security as well as for Sam, and we don't have to even talk about it tonight, but as I read the Code of Federal Regulations site that you had in the margin for 4.5.5.1, I wondered whether it's appropriate to say that if they don't provide it, we can deny service or require reasonable security deposit. It seems to me that it's pretty clear we can require the security deposit, but denying service seemed like it might be prohibited by the federal regulation. So if you could just look at that with that in mind, please.
All right, I will.
Thank you. And let's see if I had any more. Yes. In 5.1 about the security deposit, I looked for and couldn't find anything that said if they didn't pay, how we would use it. Whether we had to use it before we shut them off, whether we could shut them off first and then use it, because as I understand it, we often, even after a shut off, we are owed money, rather than using the deposit, before we shut them off, and then they don't have the deposit, then we shut them off, then we're stuck. Does that make sense, Sam and John?
think you're asking if there was a specific, how we handle the security deposit that we have.
Right, and should the policy talk about it? That was, or should the policy talk about that in a way that protects us?
Okay.
And then the next one is, I believe, 5.1.9, and should there be language about contractual industrial customers there? Because as I recall, we have a specific kind of an unusual security deposit arrangement with Cascade Steel, because there's just sort of an exception that says, or as provided a contract with large, what we call them, large industrial customers, or whatever their classification is. I just don't want that to be inconsistent with our contract with Air Liquide.
So you'd be looking for something there to be similar to that contract language?
No, I think I'd be looking for something that says, this is the general rule, but if there's a contract with the customer, those categories, the contractual language to achieve this goal will supersede the general language.
Okay.
And I think that actually might be, it may not be perfectly addressed, but I think that would probably be addressed in the application provision.
Okay. That was the question. You certainly could have already addressed it, and I didn't catch it. And then finally, in 13.2, about if people violate the easements, should we also that we also have all of the rights available in law or equity for violation of an easement right? In other words, cutting somebody's power off may not help us if we have to serve a whole subdivision with the line that they're interfering with. And we may not want to have to reroute it. We may have to sue them to say, remove whatever you've done here. And I just want to make sure we haven't taken that right away from ourselves. So Sam, if you could look at that too, please.
Right.
Great. That's it. Thank you for me. I'm sure everybody else has something too.
Thank you, Chair. Other members of the commission?
I think this is coming back to us, but under definitions, I think we should clarify about this. I don't know if it's called a city service charge, the city service fee, or whatever the fee is. I think it would be important to add that in the definitions section and be consistent throughout the document. What is it called? Is it a service
charge?
City service charge. Yeah. So just be consistent throughout the document and then add the definition. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tate?
I think I'm would like to look at this again, in connection with the agreement from the city. I think, it looks like you've done a great job getting all of the different sections of the customer interactions down in policies. And I appreciate the work you've done. It just, I think we can't fully know whether it's in complete alignment with what's going to happen next until we get, some final language there. And this is a silly thing, and I guess I didn't look at the definitions, but are we past the day and age where when you say that you need something in writing, that that is just assumed that that's an email, that's an electronic writing as well as any other writing? I mean, I don't know, Tom or Sam, has the world, I don't know where the world's gone with that, but nobody writes many people don't write anymore. So just wondering.
Well, I'll just pick up. That's a constant frustration for our staff. I think I can see a smile on Trina's face. We've had these discussions. So it's never a bad idea to be explicit and say what you mean. For example, contracts, we talk about that all the time in terms of, can the document be executed electronically? Generally, the rule is, does the document provide for it? is what I tell staff.
Mhm.
And if it does, then yes. If it doesn't, then generally no.
Mhm.
Um,
How does the staff feel about that? Would they be fine to accept electronic communication as writing from clients for the most part?
I think I'll just answer. I think they generally yes, and I think they probably generally prefer that for
Yeah.
record keeping purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see a couple places in there where it said something you could communicate by phone, but then, then I guess it's just that, do you have a good enough record when somebody verbally communicates something that it's documented as having been communicated? I don't know what the process is for that, but I did see a couple places in there where there was an option. And then if you're verbally telling something, how does that get into the record? And as a permanent agreement? Just a comment, not a.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Comment. Okay, thank you. I also have a comment, and I think it would be good to say this as well, that this is a comment and not an objective or a viewpoint on which way this goes, but this is an observation, and it goes back also to 13.1 and 13.2, having to do with the right of way. And my concern here with the added language is that, as I believe we all know, recently there has been disagreement over the use of the right of the way by the city of McMinnville and Water and Light. And so I feel like adding some of this language into this policy at this time, when we are not currently engaged in that conversation, right? We've kind of mutually agreed to set that conversation aside and refocus. I feel like some of this policy language kind of is directed at that conversation that was happening, and or perhaps was not directed, excuse me, but could be directed at some of that conversation that was happening. And that gives me cause to pause. And so this is also language I'd prefer to come back to. I don't think it will really be resolved with the city service charge, but the concern around that remains, and I'm not quite sure how to next step it yet. I understand there needs to be, there's existing language, and this language should be clear, and I'm always supportive of clear policy language. I am only hesitant to add policy language in that could affect perhaps one of the most, or at least one of the most complicated customer relationships. And that's my thought on that.
So Remy, the concern I have is that I didn't, and maybe I just missed it, but I didn't see it as part of the thing with the city. I was thinking about other customers. So you're concerned about what if the city is the customer?
I feel as though that this potentially muddies the water. And, I tend to be on the overly cautious side of putting, of not getting not locking entities into things when there's a lack of clarity. So I just feel like this language could be applied in that. I don't want I'm not proposing any language is taken out. I'm just, as we work through this, and since it's already been discussed that this is a discussion in progress, I just want to bring that thought to mind, that if this policy were to be applied, would it then get layered into this other difficult conversation? And that is why I wanted to preface it with that it's not taking a position on either side of it, but just expressing that concern that's based on these previously existing conversations and lack of clarity.
So Remy, when do you think, I read this as and I hear what you're saying, that it might be read the other way, theoretically, but I saw this as directed to dealing with, somebody who, is a homeowner or a business owner or a subdivider or something like that. And we have right-of-way needs or issues with that person. And so when do you think it would be appropriate for Water and Light to protect us in those situations? When will we be able to do that?
Well, I guess I would back up to the beginning of your question, which was your interpretation is who is addressed. So I guess the question then would be, does Water and Light consider the city of McMinnville a customer? And if so, would they be included in this policy?
Maybe, I don't know. I have to ask staff whether, do we get easements from the city when they want service extended? I guess it would be because.
Yeah, we have gotten easements from the city. I mean, it's when we put, for example, transformers on city property, we have in the past gotten easements on city property. And I think that is primarily explained by the need to put those transformers and facilities on the record, so everybody knows that we've got power lines and equipment on a location. I guess the thing that maybe makes this somewhat complicated is the city certainly has authority to regulate the public right of way. The term here, easements and right of ways, we use that term. I mean, we use the term easement or right of way kind of interchangeably for private rights. So it's not. I don't know that this. I think the mayor is referring to the public right of way is what she's making reference to, and our ability to regulate that. We don't regulate the public right of way.
And Sam, do we sometimes require developers to dedicate public right of way, or is just easements to us because the planning department takes care of the right of way?
We will ask for easements. We don't. Maybe James would have another perspective of this, but I don't think we require public right of ways for utility services alone. We wouldn't require a public street to be put in just for a water line or electrical line. If that's what you're asking, we would ask for an easement, a utility easement.
The city catches that on the planning department side. Right.
Yeah, although we generally place our water lines, I think by policy, we place our water lines in the city right of way. Our utility lines are generally placed in public utility easements that are alongside the right of way in new subdivisions. Although some of our utilities are also in the right of way in older subdivisions. I think that's correct.
So Remy, we should look at this to is Sam correct that you're concerned about the public right of way?
My concern, yes, is that if this were interpreted with the city of McMinnville as a customer, because it doesn't say private right of way, it actually specifically says all rights of way, that would be towards going towards an end to a conversation, which right now is a conversation that we're not engaged in. If that makes sense. Essentially, I'd like to keep workshopping this 13.1 and 13.2, which it sounds like it already needs other workshopping. So I don't have a goal of changing any language here. I want to see clarity around the language and have those conversations with continued conversations with Mr. Justice as well. I believe he said generally this is meant to address private rights of way, but it does not exclude the public right of way, and Water and Light does use the public right of way as well currently. So I just want to avoid confusion down the road.
And Sam, one more thing too. I have a vague recollection from quite a while ago. Some developers or property owners who wanted to water or power Water and Light might have also cooperated with the city to get the people to dedicate right of way at the top for the public right of way, like for a street or something was going to go in there. And it's vague, but would you mind checking with the planning department to see if that's anything that they think could happen in the future? Because I don't want to end that cooperation if it's something that exists, and it may be that I remember it wrong.
But we did do one here recently, and that was up on Grand Haven. That was back in, I think, about 2015, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And we required somebody to dedicate like a street right of way in order to get their water or power extended.
We had the developer wanted to put the street in. We had an easement, and we had to work with the city so that we could ensure that we continue to have some type of easement for our electric facilities.
That kind of went the other way.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess my point is that we worked with the city to work that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your comment, Chair, about continuing to work together, absolutely. You know, I haven't, since we got this packet yesterday, I mean, I've not reviewed this packet with anybody other than very briefly yourself, Chair Tankersley. So these are my comments. These are not the comments of the city of McMinnville. And I think that that's important for this body to hear as well, that this concern is stemming from my interpretation of 13.1 and 13.2 and concern that there could be a lack of clarity in the future.
And we want to remember that this is existing language.
Some of it, yes, but some of it is new, and that's what's giving me pause. And again, I'm not asking for any change to the language, and I am not criticizing the language. It brought up a potential red flag for me, and I'd like to make sure we have the time to flesh that out, because it's my utmost goal that we have just it is so important to me that Water and Light and City of McMinnville have a healthy and good working relationship going forward, and that's my goal. I had another question on this. On the it says McMinnville Water and Light may find the customer in violation of customer policies, a reason for service disconnection, and or in McMinnville Water and Light's sole discretion may relocate the facilities. I'm wondering, is that a commission or an administrative decision?
I don't, Sam, do you remember if we've ever had any of those issues come up? I'm trying to remember if we've had any of those come up.
Because that's new language that's
Right.
being suggested.
Well, I think your question is, would that decision have to come to the commission, or could that be a decision the administrator could make?
Correct. That's not clear in the policy of who the decision maker is.
Okay, we could clarify that.
Thank you. And I had one other question, or one other comment, which was in 15.7.1. And this goes back, this was a minor, this was a comment before about the consistent language. Earlier in the document, language is changed to say something like during McMinnville Water and Light business hours. And then here, I think it says business hours, but there's just where McMinnville Water and Light business hours are referenced through the document. It's minorly inconsistent. And so that would just be a note to some places, I think it's Monday through Thursday, but it's been changed. In some places it says excludes holidays. And I think where that language exists about the availability of McMinnville Water and Light, the language should be the same for clarity. And then I have a question in 2.6.2. The last sentence says, a customer wishing to disconnect from water or electric service only, retaining other McMinnville Water and Light service must make a specific arrangement. Mr. Spence, can you expand on that, or what's the methodology, or how, I guess I just kind of don't understand the application.
2.6.2 is where you're referencing that last sentence.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I believe this language was added after referencing Mr. Justice, you might help me looking at some other policies, where customers could choose to keep one service, pick electric over water, water over electric. If they wanted to keep one instead of the other, they could make an arrangement on one of those. Is that what the intention was on that one, Mr. Justice?
Yeah, I think the idea is we're going to have sort of default provisions for how payments are applied, at least maybe against water and electricity. But if a customer was wanting to keep water but wanted to go into disconnect on electricity, they would have to contact and tell us that. So we're applying payments in a way that happens.
Okay, and it's not specifically defined how they make that arrangement, but that is just common practice that they would call in and that's known how to be dealt with. So
mainly it's the communication, understanding what they want.
Okay, thank you for the clarity on that. On number 6, time payment agreement. This is time payment agreement. Arrangements require prior approval. This is changing from office manager to customer service manager. I'm assuming that just relates to how job responsibilities are as they are now. Or is there another reason to change that? Or has the title, if you'll just educate me on.
Title has changed since the last revision.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I had another, the same right-of-way language repeated in the involuntary disconnections in 3.1.12, and that would just be a repeat of wanting to make sure we have clarity of communication. Tom, I bet you didn't think my list was going to be longer than yours on this one, huh? I have a couple other minor notes that I don't need to take all of staff and commission time with, that I can send in because I need to read my notes and the language at the same time. They're all very small things, and if it works, I will just send those directly to you, Mr. Spence, and I'll copy Mr. Dietz and Chair Tankersley as well. They're very small, they're very minor things.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the commission, any additional thoughts? Chair. We can't hear you yet, Tom.
Okay, this should work now, I think. So if you could copy the rest of the commission on that too, please, I think that would be good.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Okay. And I believe at this time we're ready to go into executive session. Mr. Justice, will you please read the citation to take us into executive session?
Sure. We're going to go into executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 sub F to consider information and records that are exempt from public disclosure under ORS 192-355 sub 23 relating to identifying security measures, individual building and information processing. I'll just note that if there's any media in the meeting that they're restricted to sharing this information publicly as we stay on this topic. I'll note that we will not take any action in executive session. We will come back into open session afterwards to take any action. With that, I think we're ready to go into executive session. I will close the door